So we'll just jump right into the overview. And if I didn't mention, take for granted that I see a lot of familiar names in the chat. And so I kind of expect everybody to know how we do things. But if you're new, I apologize. Feel free to answer the questions in the chat. We have Matthew, Alex, Marshall, and Kyron. And when Kyron's speaking, I'll be monitoring the chat, providing answers. And then when a question would benefit the group as a whole, any one of us will, call on the presenter at the time and we can address the question to the group. But typically, that's the best way if you have a question along the way. We do ask that the questions stick to the training if possible. I mean, if you're submitting data and you have an error, please submit a ticket. We'd like to, review that and not give you a generality. That's the best we can do without seeing the exact data. So keep that in mind. All right, so this is the big topic for end of year in general and going forward is our timelines, right? I'm sure you all have heard that the intent is not to provide any more extensions. I will tell you from our perspective, we're getting a lot of pressure. And so we're having to change some of the way we do our monitoring here in CSIS. So, while we've heard this before, I can say from my perspective, I've never had so much pressure and instruction in terms of the deadlines and timelines of submission. And so currently, of course, it's the end of April. And so you can see that the start of the submission window begins May 8th. That only means Snapshot starts processing. Of course, you can always submit data year round, but the snapshots will give you access to report, certification errors, and CDDs. So that marks the start of the submission. For end of year, the data should be submitted as students have meetings and program changes. And then you can see the certification deadline. Again, I want to reiterate the intent is to be self-approved, if possible, by July 28th. They only want final kind of changes in that submission window or that amendment window. Typically, the heavy lifting is done in the amendment window. They're trying to get away from that. So, we just want to bring that to everyone's attention. Again, the key dates, snapshots start on May 8th, certification deadline, July 28th, amendment window, final deadline, July 25th. All right, so that one's in red. That's the final one. That's the one that, when you talk about an extension, that's the one they're not intending to move. So why do we have end of year 4, right? The end of year 4 data collection provides information required for students with disabilities to satisfy the requirements of the Individuals with Disability Act, right? We all know that, but ultimately we have 2 data collections, Fall 1 and end of year 4 for our students with disabilities, because Fall 1 is only going to account for the meetings held on or before Census Day. So the rest of the school year, any meeting or any changes to a student special education program would go unaccounted for. And so that's why we have the end of year data collection. Also, exclusive to end of year 4 are the students who have exited special education, not exited school, but exited special education, right? Their eligibility has expired or they have withdrawn from services for whatever reason. So what is the data used for? So the special education file provides us the counts and program exits for Individuals with Disability Education Act. We have special education monitoring that is consistent throughout the year. And we need to determine the district of special education accountability for dashboard, right? Then you have those services that need to be reported for the special education program. And then that's in the SSRV or services file. And then the post-secondary status, again, I missed this on the previous slide, but this is exclusive again to end of year 4, not part of the Fall 1 data collection for students with disabilities. Those students who have exited K through 12 education, we need to know their outcome a year after they've exited. And then this is some of the similarities to Fall 1. The end of year submission has the special education and services file, just like Fall 1, but the post-secondary status is exclusive to end of year 4. All this information is expected to come from your SED system directly from via API, right? And it's been since the inception of Students with Disability data reporting. Data collected, same as it has been in years past, right? We want to know the student's primary disability, their federal setting, the district of accountability, the education plan, post-secondary status, meetings and amendments, services and services provided, just to name some of the key data collected. Then we think about post-secondary status for end of year 4, it's only for students who have exited secondary education, not your transition students who may have certificates, special education certificates, and are getting life skills, so on and so forth. If these are the students who are no longer enrolled for any reason, they had an IEP, and they not return to regular education, transfer to another program, or have been deceased, right? That's something you want to consider. Only report those students who left K through 12 education. And then the end of year 4 roles, right? We have our SEDS data coordinator and our SIS data coordinator. At a minimum, these are the roles your SEDS data coordinators need, right? I think one thing missing here is I want to say there's an extract limitation. I can't recall offhand. They may need SENR edit to get an extract. I'm not sure which one. I can look it up.
Is it the access for DSE and SPED related one? Yeah, let me double check here.
If you don't, I will. But these are the minimum amount of roles they need. And what I wanted to emphasize is if you're a SIS data coordinator or the CALPADS data coordinator, we know you work hard. A lot of you had struggled to clean up your data and get it to where you can consistently manage it. I mean, I hear this all the time, but you really need to consider, can your SEDS data coordinator do their job with minimal restrictions? Probably were in that situation when you started out at CalPads. You were asked to do things you didn't have roles and privileges for. It's very frustrating. So I always have to repeat myself because we always have new SEDS data coordinators. You may give them more than the roles presented here. Probably should give them more than the roles presented here. That's just, my spill, my opinion on that. I'm not managing your data. So if it all goes wrong, don't say Nate said. So that's just an opinion. The coordinator goes, these are the specific roles you need access for students with disability information. Most of you will have all the roles CalPads requires anyway, but that's kind of the guideline here on the slide. And then Kyron put in the chat, I see the SENR edit and the SPED edit gain that extract. So then you have key stakeholders. So when you think about the roles and privileges, right? You think about the data collection. At a minimum, these are the people who are going to be involved, right? And so we deliberately kind of buddied up the two data coordinators. You guys have to work hand in hand. You have to have somewhat of a personal relationship because you rely on each other. Certified to resolve errors, data coming from the SIS for the students with disabilities, data coming from the SEDS with students with disabilities should be in alignment. It should mirror each other. And so, you're unfamiliar with your SEDS data coordinator. If you have no access to your SEDS system, you need to work this out, right? Either if it's a licensing issue and you can't get access, you got to work really hand in hand with the SEDS data coordinator. And likewise, the SEDS data coordinator, communicate your limitations of CalPads with your SIS data coordinator. Then you have your program staff, right? Those are the people who are working with the students and the parents, holding the meetings, putting that information to your SEDS system. You may have a district coordinator who manages all that, the SEDS data coordinator. Of course, you're going to have a SELPA contact, and someone's going to have to be able to have a frequent line of communication with the NPS schools if you have students receiving services at NPS schools. And then those are the relationships that the SEDS data coordinator usually has more closely. As far as the SIS data coordinator, you have your school site staff, right? They have to know how to enroll your students that have their students with disabilities. Some of them receive services at home. They have to understand that. Some of them may need a SSID and not receive services at school, like your private school students. So you have your school site staff who enroll these students. They have to know the nuances of enrollment. You all troubleshoot the errors, and it's mostly regarding enrollment and plan type. And you have district administrators, right? Those people who should take some ownership because they're the ones who are going to come back with the questions, when it hits accountability. And then, of course, I put in here our CSIS monitor, kind of because I wanted symmetry. It kind of looks like a butterfly. But really, again, speaking from our perspective, the squeaky wheel gets oiled, closed mouth doesn't get fed. I can't speak for all of us here, But if you have questions, if you have concern and you reach out, we will respond. You don't bring those issues to us like you. We're managing so many different areas of work, whether it's doing tickets, creating presentations, going on the road, presenting, whatever it is. We tend to get the majority of our communication towards the end of the deadline. So if you reach out earlier, you probably get a better and more diligent and consistent communication with us, and we can help you overcome any roadblocks along the way. And then Kyron was kind enough to create this end of year 4 survival kit. It just tells you real quickly where you can find a lot of the resources. We'll kind of point to those in shortly. So normally we would go here and go, to the YouTube side, the user manual, the resource page where you can get the training and look up at the flash messages. Then Eldorado SELPA has training video library, which is a great resource Kyron provided. Like I said, we'll point to that here shortly.